That's a great question, which I'm glad to answer. Let me say first how great it is to be back with this community. I feel like we're family here, and in that regard, I'm very happy to have with me a woman who I have learned, in all honesty, is much more popular in Ashraf 3 than I am. That is my wife, Hadassah Lieberman. Yeah. Let me, before I answer your question, Rami, let me just say congratulations on this extraordinary victory in the courts of Paris today. Wow. As I'm sure many of you know, certainly the Americans who are here, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King famously said that the moral arc of the universe often bends slowly, but it always bends toward justice. In this case, the moral arc of the universe here in Paris bent quickly toward justice, and it is only because the NCRI-MEK, faced with the demonization of the regime in Tehran, the threats and pressure that they issued and sent forth to the government here, that the NCRI said, we will not be deterred. We will not be deterred. We will go to court and challenge the legal system of this country. Liberté, equality, fraternity, with the emphasis on liberté. How could you possibly in France prohibit a group of people from peacefully demonstrating in the public square? And that persistence on behalf of a principle, fearless, exactly what you said, was rewarded by the courts here, the judge here in Paris. And may I say this, you gave the French and France an opportunity to return to the high ground. You made this country better than it was for a short while when they banned that rally. Amen. And I can just see the frustration and anger in the halls of power in Tehran. Oh, Raisi is probably slamming the table. We should have had better lawyers or whatever it was. Anyway, a victory for freedom in Iran, a victory for freedom in France, and an extraordinary setback for the tyrants in Tehran. So let me talk a little bit about the allegation, which comes mostly from the government in Tehran, that there is no alternative to the government. So the U.S., the West, everyone else has to compromise with them. Incidentally, that is exactly the message that Adolf Hitler gave out in the 1930s that brought Chamberlain to Munich to make that weak pact that really led to World War II. The history cries out to us not to repeat that again. But I want to say that beyond the question of is there an alternative, there is the question that the regime raises, which is, do we need an alternative? The fact is that, as they would allege and try to get people to believe, this regime is forever. Well, history tells us no regime is totalitarian as this will ever be forever. That's what they said to the American freedom fighters in the 18th century. How can you possibly liberate yourself from the most powerful empire in the world, Great Britain? And they said it Also, as Bob Torricelli mentioned, to the people in the Soviet Union, how can you possibly expect to liberate yourself from this extraordinary power? And the lessons of history go on and on like this. No totalitarian regime can last forever. It's not in the nature of history. That's for sure. And I will tell you this as an American whose founding values call on us to support freedom wherever we can in the world. It's right there in the Declaration of Independence. We can never acknowledge that there is no alternative to a totalitarian government, certainly not in Iran. And we know there is an alternative. It is the people of Iran. It is a democratic republic, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And Iran is closer to that today than ever before, because the regime is weaker than it's ever been before. The sanctions are hurting. The demonstrations after Mahsa Amini's killing by the so-called morality police are the broadest ever against this regime of the mullahs. Their alliance with Russia, supplying weapons to the Russians to use against the Ukrainians, has awakened so much of the world to their evil, including the governments here in Europe. So they're at their weakest, and there will be a need for an alternative, and there's a need for an organization to lead the way to that alternative. And of course, it is the NCRI MEK. The NCR MEK are ready. I don't think that there has ever been a group of rebels to tyranny that has ever been as prepared to lead the transition to freedom as people in this movement are. The NCRI and MEK have earned the right to lead the transition to a democratic republic because they have fought consistently for a singular principle, and that, whether it was against the Shah or against the mullahs, and that is freedom for the people of Iran. And as Rami's question suggests, they have done so with a single-minded devotion. It has been the priority focus of their lives. Many thousands have given their lives for this cause. They have earned the right to lead this transition, but that's not enough. Often in life, we don't get what we have earned. The MEK NCRI is ready. There is a transition plan. The plan calls for elections by the people within a limited period of time to elect a constituent assembly, which will then adopt a constitution and elect leaders of the country. No one else has that plan, and the NCRI is ready to implement it. The other demonization that the regime employs against their opposition is that there's no unity. Well, the first thing is the NCRI is itself a constituent assembly. It's a unified organization of opponents of the regime. And Mrs. Rajavi, the leadership has been very clear that they will welcome anyone else to this cause, to this fight for freedom, who accepts the basic goal, which is to liberate the people of Iran and move to a democratic, free republic in the country that you are calling homeland. Now, there's one other element that entitles or qualifies the NCRI eye for leadership. No movement can succeed without a leader. And this movement has an extraordinary leader. Maryam Rajavi is a woman of principle. She's a woman of courage. She's a woman who was a strong and strategic leader. She actually created the role model that I think is now playing itself out across Iran with this extraordinary movement led by women. Well, the NCRI has been led by a woman for a long time, and that woman is more ready than anyone else to lead the transition to freedom in Iran.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now I'll say just a final word, and I take the liberty of speaking for the American delegation that is here, a broadly diverse, bipartisan. We're here because we believe our national values require us to be here, our belief in freedom. We're also here, secondarily, because truly no government in the world threatens the security of the United States of America or has killed more Americans than the tyrants in Tehran. So for reasons of our national security and our values, we are here with a sense of commitment. And we will not yield, as you will not yield, until we hold a gathering of this kind in freedom and triumph in the city of Tehran with a new free government.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Lieberman. Marc, I want to turn over to you. I know you've been with Vice President Pence on many, many discussions talking about Iran. And I know Vice President has, when he visited Ashraf 3, he raised the issue of one of the biggest misunderstanding and the myth is that there is no alternative. But there is one, and he was referring to the leadership of Maryam Rajavi, the alternative of the National Council of Resistance, as a coalition that is popular. It has popularity within Iran. It has credibility. It has authenticity. It has that historic record that really stands on its own compared to anyone else out there. Give us your thoughts about the importance of the alternative that resonates with the Iranian society and to what Senator Lieberman was talking about, the call for the non-nuclear secular republic Iran.
Well, thank you, Professor, and thank you for including me on this esteemed panel. I certainly appreciate it. I've had the opportunity to speak to organization of Iranian American communities 4 or 5 times, and as you noted, also in your camp in Albania. And it's always an honor to be with you, and it's impossible to go to Albania and not come away moved by the plight of many in MEK who have suffered at the hands of Raisi, and to also be moved by Maryam Rajavi and what you are, the movement you are leading. But I also echo the comments of Senator Lieberman that as great as it's been to have been a part of your events in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere across America, as well as Albania and now in Paris, I think we all look forward to the day that we can gather in an open, free, and democratic Iran for one of these panels in the future.
Absolutely.
You know, my morning started this morning with a text from Nasser announcing the victory in court. And, you know, who knew that it would take Iranian families assembling here in Paris to remind the French of the importance of the peaceful assembly and the right to free speech. But thank you for your leadership. It's important that it's be spoken even amongst some of our European allies who lose sight of what freedom really means. So thank you all for doing that. You know, Professor, I think it's important to note what the West can do to help create the conditions for an alternative. And, my experience was serving in the Trump-Pence administration. Before serving as the Vice President's Chief of Staff, I was Director of Legislative Affairs for Donald Trump. And I know that we're a bipartisan organization. I think that there's no Democrat who's had, or no American, frankly, who's had a more clarion call for freedom and a stronger champion for freedom across the Middle East than Senator Lieberman. And he's somebody that we all on our side of the aisle respect enormously. But
They're here.
But I must say that through the prism that I had, we had witnessed an Obama Biden administration that I think in their effort to appease the Ayatollah and the mullahs had reached an Iranian nuclear deal that, despite its name, basically created a path for Iran to have nuclear weapons. We sent pallets of cash, billions of dollars to the mullahs in Iran. It emboldened the Ayatollah. And when we came into office, I can't tell you that when Donald Trump kept his commitment to pull us out of the Iran nuclear deal, how many European leaders called the White House begging us to reconsider and to please stay in the deal. And many of them, especially Macron here, enjoyed the commerce with Iran and didn't want to lose that. And it seems the wrong sacrifice on the backs of the freedom of those who are fighting for their own freedom in Iran that the West would be making deals of that nature. And I'm really proud that our administration pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. I'm proud that our administration levied enormous sanctions against Iran that I think crippled the despotic regime there. I'm incredibly proud of the decisive decision that the president and the vice president took to take out Qasem Soleimani on the battlefield.
That's right. That's right.
A man not only responsible for the murder of many Iranians, but also hundreds of American soldiers on the battlefields. And we can't talk about it in detail, but I think it's important to note that the elimination of the leading nuclear scientists in Iran was also an incredibly important message that was sent. And I'm proud that our administration was willing to take those stands that I think crippled the Ayatollah in ways that created conditions for change. I'm saddened to see some of the steps backward that I think the Biden administration was quick to want to re-enter into an Iranian nuclear deal. I think the first steps that they took of taking the Houthis off the terrorist watch list was another bad decision. When you see nations like Saudi Arabia filling the vacuum that America has left by wanting to partner with China and Russia, it's a startling observation. But when the Houthis are attacking them regularly and the Biden administration comes into office and immediately takes them off the terrorist watch list, we create that vacuum. And when America is weak and when the West is weak and we are not standing for the principles of freedom, it undermines those who are fighting like the MEK. And so I look forward to the day that we again return to America having a strong role in foreign policy and America having a strong role against Iran, and one that enforces sanctions and enforces discipline that actually creates and continues to create a condition for an alternative like MEK to continue to thrive. I would like to simply, I guess, wrap up with the comment that, despite concerns about where I see the current administration in America, I think there's obviously much hope. And there's hope in the numbers of you gathering. There's hope in your victories here this week. There's hope in Rajavi being invited to testify in front of the United States Congress and people recognizing your movement. And so the winds of change are blowing. and it's essential that your voice continue to be heard. So I thank you for making the stand that you have, the fact that more and more Americans are noticing, the Congress is noticing, and I believe it's going to be essentially important that the next administration in Washington, D.C. be one that has a clear-eyed view toward Iran.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. So in the next 24 minutes, I want to go around and ask all of our panelists a couple of questions, knowing that we have members of the media in the audience here today, and also this program is being live streamed into Iran, as well as actually globally. If you were to, we talked about the issue of alternative. We talked about the role of Maryam Rajavi, the path forward. The next two panels are going to be discussing the US policy on Iran and the European policy on Iran. But in your mind, if you were to give top 3 things to members of media and top 3 items that you want to message to the people of Iran in terms of what to look for in an alternative that is credible and authentic, what would that be, Senator Torricelli?
Okay, let's talk to the people of Iran. Many can hear our voices today. It's important they know part of what's being said here. And let's do it through you. You're back. Few of you are here for the first time. Do you really believe you can overthrow the government in Tehran? Are you here because it's a commitment to culture or your family or the place that you love and you feel you need to be here? Or because you really believe that you can overthrow the government in Tehran? You would be forgiven for being here out of a commitment to family and culture, but having your doubts. I will tell you, when my family left Italy, in fascist Italy, they came to America, they never looked back. They never believed you could overthrow fascism. You couldn't speak Italian in our house. No one could talk about Italy. We were Americans. It was done. And you would be entitled to have that view. But you'd be wrong. I've said these numbers to some of you before. Overthrowing the government of Tehran, of course it's hard. Impossible? Not at all. Not even close. How many people went back to St. Petersburg to overthrow the Tsar and the Kerensky government with Lenin? How many? 24. When Napoleon returned to France, how many people left with him? 40. When Castro returned to overthrow dictatorship in Cuba from Guatemala, how many people did he have with him? 25. When the ANC was taking down the government of South Africa, how many core members were there in the ANC? 200. Joe Lieberman talked about the American Revolution. At Valley Forge, how many soldiers did Washington have? 800. Tyrants fall of their own weight because people will not stand for it anymore. When I was a young congressman, Joe was probably in the room, and now I am speaking to the people of Iran. I heard an unbelievable message. Lech Walesa, who had been a shipyard worker in Poland, became the president of a free Poland. He came to speak to the Congress. His words, I wish every Iranian could hear that speech. He said every day he went to work, and every day they sat on the floor because they wanted a free union and a free Poland, and they were thrown out. The next day they did the same thing, and it went on for months. One day, Lech Walesa, shipyard worker, with not a single man standing behind him, was walking home. And on the right was the road to his house, and on the left was the wall to the shipyard. And he said to himself, not today. Not today. And he climbed the wall, went back in the shipyard. And to his surprise, hundreds and then thousands of people followed him, and they occupied the shipyard, and they shut it down. And they started their union, which started a party which brought down Polish communism. He didn't have the 24 that went to St. Petersburg, or the 12 that came, or 20 that came to Paris. He stood alone. We have amassed a massive movement around the globe of enormous resources, a political core, an inspiring leader in Madame Rajavi. But we will not break their backs. We will fill the vacuum because we are ready to lead and provide a new government in Tehran. What will break their backs is there's that oil worker who says, not today. There's that soldier pointing his gun at an innocent Iranian citizen who says, today I'm putting down my gun. I did not join the armed forces of Iran to abuse my people. I did not start pumping oil to feed the corruption of the mullahs. The bureaucrat who will not come to work tomorrow. I don't know where it'll start. I don't know who it is. I know that there are thousands of people in the streets of Tehran right now fighting to be that person and for that honor. But that one will emerge, then two, then three, and it'll rise like a wave. If you are here because you believe in Iran and your culture and your family and you're committed, God bless you. But if that's the only reason you're here, you're wrong. You are bringing down the mullahs. There's a reason. There's a reason Raisi called Macron. There's a reason they're putting pressure on Albania. There's a reason why they are chasing the MEK all around the globe. Because they know, even if you don't, even if you're wrong, even if you don't believe, you're wrong. They believe. The mullahs may be evil, but they're not stupid. They know this movement brings down the regime. The day is coming. And to your earlier question, what you've done by helping this organization is that when they come down, there doesn't have to be chaos, another lost decade, more poverty, more abuse, another Shah. Fascism doesn't have to fill the vacuum. We have the makings of a democratic revolution that knows where it is going, the Iran that it wants. The movement is here. And you've built that. And for that, you and your family and those who follow you should be eternally proud. I don't know if it answered your question, but I hope it did.
It did. Thank you so much.